The sand was warm between her fingers. The 40-year-old billionaire froze in the doorway of his mansion, watching his 20-year-old maid in a blue uniform kneeling on the grass, bringing a handful of dirt to her mouth. "What the hell are you doing?" he asked, stepping closer. She looked up, tears streaming down her brown face, too weak to lie. What he didn't know was that the truth behind that sand would shatter his world and make him question everything he thought he knew about the wicked woman he had married just a week ago. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. "Please don't fire me, Mr. Miller. I can explain," Tasha Williams cried, her hands covered in sand, tears streaming down her face. "I know it looks crazy. I know it does." Jonathan Miller stood frozen in his Japanese garden, the morning sun warming his back as he stared at his maid crouched near the decorative stone pathway. Seconds earlier, he had been walking to his garden office, laptop in hand, planning to work from home on this beautiful autumn day. Now, he couldn't process what he was seeing. Tasha, his 25-year-old maid in her blue uniform, eating sand from his garden. "Tasha, I'm not going to fire you," Jonathan said, setting his laptop down on a nearby bench. "But I do need to understand what's happening here." Tasha wiped her tears with the back of her wrist, smearing sand across her cheek. Her entire body trembled. "It's a condition, sir. It's called pica. It makes me crave things that aren't food." She looked down at her hands in shame. "I've been trying to control it. I really have." Jonathan approached slowly and sat on the bench, gesturing for her to join him. At 42, the founder of CyberShield Technologies was used to solving complex problems. But this situation left him completely unprepared. "How long has this been happening?" he asked, his voice gentle. "The cravings started about 6 months ago," Tasha explained, reluctantly sitting beside him. "Around the same time I started getting sick. The doctors found severe anemia, but they don't know what's causing it." Jonathan glanced toward his main house, a sprawling mansion nestled among 15 acres of prime Westport, Connecticut real estate. Through the large windows, he could see his wife Victoria watching them, her slender figure perfectly silhouetted against the glass. 6 months, Jonathan repeated thoughtfully. "You've been working for us for 18 months now, right?" Tasha nodded. "Yes, sir. And I've never had health problems before. I was always healthy until—" Her voice trailed off, and she looked down at her hands again. "Until what, Tasha?" She took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know what's causing it, Mr. Miller. I've been getting sicker because someone is poisoning me." Jonathan stared at her in disbelief. "Poisoning you? Who would do that?" Tasha's eyes moved slowly toward the house, where Victoria still stood watching them. Jonathan followed her gaze, and for a brief moment his wife's perfect smile appeared before she turned away from the window. "It's your wife, Mr. Miller," Tasha whispered, "and I think she's starting to poison you too." The accusation hung in the air between them. Jonathan felt his heart rate increase. Victoria Harrington Miller, his wife of 6 months, a former runway model known for her charity work and society connections, a poisoner? It seemed impossible. "That's a serious accusation, Tasha," he said carefully. "Why would Victoria want to poison you?" "I don't know, sir, but I started getting sick after she joined the household. At first it was just stomach problems and headaches. Then the anemia got so bad I needed blood tests. That's when the cravings started." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I've been documenting everything. The doctors can't explain why my iron levels keep dropping no matter what supplements I take." Jonathan looked at the medical records on her phone. The downward trend in her health was clear and concerning. "If you believe you're being poisoned, why haven't you quit?" he asked. Tasha's eyes filled with fresh tears. "My mother, sir. She has multiple sclerosis. We live in a small apartment in Bridgeport. Her medications are expensive. Without my job and the health insurance, we couldn't survive." Jonathan ran his fingers through his salt and pepper hair. His mind raced with questions. He had met Victoria at a charity gala only 8 months ago. Their whirlwind romance had captivated Westport's high society. But how well did he really know her? "Have you noticed anything unusual about your food or drinks?" he asked. "Only when Mrs. Miller prepares them herself. She sometimes brings me special tea she says will help my energy, and that's always when I feel worst afterward." Tasha hesitated. "And lately I've noticed she's been very interested in preparing your morning coffee personally." Jonathan remembered the slight metallic aftertaste he'd been noticing in his coffee recently. He had attributed it to a new bean variety Victoria said she'd imported. "Mr. Miller, have you been experiencing headaches, stomach issues, unusual fatigue?" Jonathan's blood ran cold. He had been having all those symptoms for weeks. He'd blamed it on work stress. "Look, Tasha, I'm not saying I believe or disbelieve you," he said finally, "but these are serious claims that need evidence. For now, I want you to continue as normal. Don't let Victoria know we've had this conversation." "What should I do, Mr. Miller?" The fear in her voice was palpable. "Don't eat or drink anything she gives you directly. If you can, pretend to consume it and dispose of it when she's not looking." Jonathan paused, thinking, "I'll find a way to investigate this discreetly." Tasha nodded, wiping away her tears. "Thank you for not thinking I'm crazy. I've built a cybersecurity company by paying attention to unusual patterns, Tasha. Sometimes what seems impossible is just well hidden." He stood up. "Go wash your hands and face. We'll talk more when it's safe." As Tasha hurried back toward the house, Jonathan saw the glass door slide open. Victoria stepped onto the patio, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a casual yet obviously expensive outfit. In her hands was a glass containing a thick green smoothie. "Darling, you've been out here forever," Victoria called, her voice musical and light. "I made your protein smoothie with those supplements you love." Jonathan forced a smile and walked toward his wife of 6 months. He took the glass from her manicured hands. "Thank you, honey. Just what I needed." Victoria's blue eyes searched his face. "Is everything okay?" "I saw you talking with Tasha. She looked upset." "Just some family issues she's dealing with," Jonathan replied, bringing the smoothie to his lips. As he pretended to take a sip, he noticed something he'd never paid attention to before: a slight metallic scent beneath the fruits and vegetables. Victoria watched him intently, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Make sure you drink it all," she said. "It's packed with everything your body needs." Jonathan nodded, suddenly very aware of the expensive wedding ring on his finger and the beautiful stranger standing before him. "I always do," he said. "You take such good care of me." Jonathan Miller stared at the green smoothie in his hands as Victoria's eyes followed his every move. He took another fake sip and smiled. "I'll finish this in my office," he said. "I have some urgent calls to make." Victoria's smile tightened slightly. "Don't forget to drink it all, darling. The supplements lose their effectiveness if you don't finish the entire glass." Once inside his home office, Jonathan poured the smoothie down the bathroom sink. He watched the thick green liquid disappear, wondering how many other drinks from his wife had contained more than just health supplements. Later that night, Jonathan sat alone in his office, searching medical websites for symptoms of poisoning. Headaches, fatigue, stomach pain, nausea, all things he'd been experiencing for weeks. He touched his temple where a dull pain had become his constant companion. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself. "Victoria can't be poisoning us." But doubt had taken root. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in years. At 11:30 at night, he pressed dial. "Hello?" The voice sounded alert despite the late hour. "Marcus? It's Jonathan Miller. I'm sorry to call so late." Dr. Marcus Freeman laughed. "John? My old roommate turns into a tech billionaire and thinks he needs to apologize for a late call? What's up?" Jonathan lowered his voice. I need a medical consultation, off the record, no insurance, no paperwork. I'll pay cash. The humor vanished from Marcus's voice. John, what's going on? I can't explain over the phone. Can I see you tomorrow? Come to my office in Greenwich at 7:30 in the morning, before my staff arrives. Thank you. The next morning, Jonathan told Victoria he had an early meeting in New York. She prepared his coffee personally, insisting he drink it before leaving. For energy, she said, watching him intently. He pretended to drink it, then dumped it in a travel mug. In his car, he poured it into a sealed container he'd brought specifically for this purpose. Dr. Freeman's office was in an upscale medical building in Greenwich. The doctor himself opened the door, looking much the same as he had in college, just with grayer hair. You look terrible, Marcus said after hugging Jonathan. Thanks. That's why I'm here. Jonathan placed the coffee container on the desk. I need this tested for toxic substances, and I need a full toxicology panel done on me. Marcus frowned. John, what's happening? Are you in some kind of trouble? Jonathan took a deep breath. I think someone might be poisoning me. And one of my household staff. For the next hour, Jonathan explained everything. Tasha's condition, his symptoms, and his suspicions about Victoria. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned. This sounds like something from a movie, Marcus said when Jonathan finished. But I've seen strange cases in my career. Some poisons can cause pica as a symptom, especially those that cause anemia. Marcus drew multiple vials of blood from Jonathan's arm. I'll rush these to the lab with top priority. I'll tell them it's for a wealthy private patient concerned about heavy metal exposure. No need to mention your suspicions yet. How long for results? 2 days, 3 at most. Marcus hesitated. John, if you really think your wife is poisoning you, shouldn't you go to the police? With what evidence? I need proof first. Jonathan stood to leave. I need to gather evidence in my own house. That afternoon, Jonathan drove to New Haven and paid cash at a specialty electronics store for a set of tiny cameras. The sales clerk didn't ask questions when Jonathan paid extra for same-day setup assistance. That night, after Victoria had gone to sleep, Jonathan and the technician installed cameras in the kitchen, the staff break room, and Jonathan's home office. Each camera was smaller than a button and connected wirelessly to a secure server only Jonathan could access. The next morning, Jonathan pretended everything was normal. He kissed Victoria goodbye and told her he had meetings all day. Instead, he drove to a coffee shop and watched the security footage on his laptop. At 9:15 in the morning, Victoria entered the kitchen. She checked to make sure she was alone, then pulled a small bottle from her pocket. The camera caught her clearly adding white powder to a teapot, the one used to prepare Tasha's morning tea. Later, she did the same with Jonathan's coffee grounds. Jonathan's phone rang. It was Marcus. I have your preliminary results, Marcus said, his voice grave. John, you have elevated levels of arsenic in your system. Jonathan felt his stomach drop. How bad? Not immediately life-threatening, but concerning. Consistent with low-dose exposure over time, the coffee sample also contained arsenic. I need copies of everything, Jonathan said. Already sent to your private email. John, you need to get out of that house. Not yet. I need more evidence. Over the next 3 days, Jonathan documented everything. He pretended to drink Victoria's special preparations, but disposed of them secretly. He noticed his headaches diminishing slightly. The security footage showed a clear pattern, Victoria systematically adding powder to Tasha's meals and Jonathan's drinks. On Friday morning, Jonathan decided to confront Victoria indirectly. He found her in the kitchen preparing breakfast. You know, he said casually, I've noticed you always make my coffee yourself these days. Victoria smiled. Of course, darling. It's a wife's job to take care of her husband. What's that powder you add to it? Victoria's hand froze momentarily before she recovered. Just herbal supplements, darling. Very expensive ones from my nutritionist. They boost your immune system. Could I see them? They're in special packaging upstairs. I'll show you later. Her smile remained fixed. But Jonathan noticed something he'd never seen before, a coldness in her eyes that sent a chill through him. "I'd like to try making coffee myself today," he said. "Don't be silly. You're too busy for that." She handed him a mug. "Drink up. You have a long day ahead." Jonathan pretended to sip. "You're right. What would I do without you?" That afternoon, while Victoria was at her yoga class, Jonathan searched their bedroom. In her closet, behind designer shoes, he found a wooden box. It was locked, but the lock was simple. He picked it open with a paperclip. Inside were several small bottles with handwritten labels. One read, J, morning dose, and another, T, food additive. But what made his blood run cold were the 5 passports beneath the bottles. Each had Victoria's photo but different names. Victoria Harrington, Vanessa Hughes, Valerie Hamilton, Veronica Harding, and Virginia Hunt. His wife of 6 months was a stranger with 5 identities. Jonathan's hands shook as he took photos of everything with his phone. He carefully replaced the items and relocked the box. As he slid it back into its hiding place, his phone vibrated with a text from Tasha. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller made me special tea again today. I pretended to drink it. I don't feel well." Jonathan texted back, "Stay strong. I have evidence now." He closed the closet door just as he heard Victoria's car pulling into the driveway. Sitting on their bed, Jonathan realized he was living with someone who was systematically poisoning him and his staff. The question was no longer if Victoria was guilty, but why and what he should do next. The lock on Victoria's mysterious box clicked open in Jonathan's hands, revealing multiple passports with different names, but all bearing his wife's photograph. Jonathan stared at the 5 passports spread on his bed, each showing Victoria's face, but with different names. His hands trembled as he heard her moving around downstairs. He quickly took photos of each document, then carefully returned everything to the wooden box. That night, Jonathan barely slept. He lay beside Victoria, listening to her steady breathing and wondering who exactly he had married. At 3 a.m, he slipped out of bed and went to his office. He searched online for private investigators and found Rachel Dawson Investigations in Boston. Her website mentioned her background as an FBI agent. Jonathan sent an email requesting an urgent meeting. By 6 a.m, Rachel had responded, agreeing to meet that day. Jonathan told Victoria he needed to drive to Stamford for business meetings. She insisted on making him breakfast. "You're up early," Victoria said, stirring something into his oatmeal. "Important meetings?" "Very important," Jonathan replied, watching her hands. "I might be late tonight." Victoria smiled. "I'll wait up." "I'm planning a special dinner for just us." Jonathan drove 2 hours to a small diner outside Boston. Rachel Dawson was already there, sitting in a back booth. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and alert eyes. "Mr. Miller," she said, extending her hand, "you said it was urgent." Jonathan sat down. "I need complete confidentiality. That's standard with all my clients." Jonathan placed an envelope on the table. "These are photos of 5 passports I found in my wife's possession. All with different names but her photo. I believe she's poisoning my maid and possibly me." Rachel's expression didn't change as she examined the photos. "These look professional. Not cheap fakes." She looked up. "Tell me everything." Jonathan explained about Tasha's illness, his own symptoms, the hidden cameras showing Victoria adding substances to their food and drinks, and the blood tests confirming arsenic. "How long have you been married?" Rachel asked. 6 months. We met at a charity event. It was... Jonathan paused. It was very quick. She was beautiful, charming. Everyone loved her. Rachel nodded. "I'll need a retainer to begin work. $5,000, cash." "I brought $10,000, Jonathan said, sliding another envelope across the table. "How soon can you start?" "I already have," Rachel said, taking notes. "First, go home and act normal. Don't confront her. Don't let her know you suspect anything." As Jonathan drove back to Westport, his phone rang repeatedly. Victoria. "Darling, where are you?" she asked when he finally answered. "Your office said you don't have meetings today." Jonathan felt cold. "I'm meeting with potential investors. Private meetings." "Oh? Who are you meeting? Maybe I know them." "I doubt it. Financial people. Very boring." Victoria's voice hardened slightly. "You sound strange. Is everything okay?" "Just busy. I'll be home later." When Jonathan arrived home that evening, he found Victoria had reorganized his office. "I thought I'd help tidy up," she said, kissing his cheek. "You work so hard." Jonathan noticed his desk drawers had been searched. "Thank you," he said, forcing a smile. "Where were you really today?" Victoria asked, her voice soft, but her eyes hard. "I told you." "Meetings. Your assistant said you had nothing scheduled. They were last minute, private." Victoria watched him closely. "No secrets between husband and wife, right?" 3 days later, Rachel sent an encrypted email to an address Jonathan had created specifically for their communications. "Found information on Vanessa Hughes," it read. "Married to William Prescott, Seattle tech executive 5 years ago. Prescott died of liver failure 8 months after wedding. She inherited $20 million. Disappeared after funeral. Working on tracking other identities. Will update soon." Jonathan felt sick. He printed the email, then deleted it completely from the server. That afternoon, Jonathan found Tasha cleaning the guest bathroom. She looked worse, pale with dark circles under her eyes. "Tasha," he said quietly, "I need your help documenting everything Victoria gives you." Tasha nodded weakly. "I've been keeping a journal, Mr. Miller, and saving samples." "Where do you keep them?" "At my friend's apartment in Bridgeport. I was afraid to keep them here." "Smart," Jonathan said. "I've hired someone to investigate Victoria. I need to know more about you too, to understand why she targeted you." Tasha sat down on the edge of the bathtub. "There's not much to tell. I grew up in the South Bronx. My mom got MS when I was 19. I was studying nursing at community college but had to drop out to care for her. We moved to Bridgeport because it was cheaper than New York but still close to her doctors." "How did you start working here?" "The agency sent me. I needed the health insurance for Mom's treatments." Tasha looked down. "Mrs. Miller was nice at first. Then about 6 months ago she started bringing me special tea, said it would give me energy. That's when I started getting sick." "Why did you suspect she was poisoning you?" "I found a book in her things while cleaning, about untraceable poisons. And one day, I saw her putting powder in my tea." Tasha's voice trembled. "I was too scared to say anything. I need this job." Jonathan put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm going to fix this, Tasha. Just hold on a little longer." The next day, another encrypted email arrived from Rachel. "Valerie Hamilton married Henry Goldman, Chicago investment banker 3 years ago. Goldman died of kidney failure 7 months after wedding. She inherited $35 million. Moved to San Francisco afterward." Jonathan was reviewing this email when Victoria entered his office without knocking. "What are you reading that's so interesting?" she asked. Jonathan closed his laptop quickly. "Work documents. Boring stuff." Victoria moved behind him and began massaging his shoulders. "You're so tense lately." And secretive. Her fingers pressed into his neck. "Don't you trust me, darling?" "Of course I do." "Then why did you install cameras in our house?" Her voice remained sweet, but her fingers dug painfully into his shoulders. Jonathan's heart raced. "Security upgrade for the whole property. Including the kitchen and my private sitting room?" Victoria's hands moved to his throat, resting there lightly. "That seems strange." "Standard procedure, every room." Victoria's phone rang, breaking the tension. She answered it, walking out of the office. Jonathan exhaled shakily. The next morning, Victoria stormed into the kitchen where Tasha was preparing breakfast. "My diamond earrings are missing," Victoria announced. "The ones Jonathan bought me for our 1-month anniversary." Tasha looked confused. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller. I haven't seen them." "Really? Because they were in my jewelry box yesterday and today they're gone. Victoria turned to Jonathan, who had just entered. Darling, I think we need to call the police. Someone has been stealing from us. Let's check again, Jonathan said calmly. Maybe they fell behind something. I've looked everywhere, Victoria insisted, and Tasha was the only one in our bedroom yesterday. Tasha's face paled. Mrs. Miller, I would never steal from you. We should search her bag, Victoria said, and her apartment. No, Jonathan said firmly. We're not accusing anyone without evidence. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying we need proof before making accusations. Victoria stormed out of the kitchen. Tasha looked at Jonathan with frightened eyes. She's trying to get rid of me, Tasha whispered. I won't let that happen, Jonathan promised. That night, Jonathan received another email from Rachel. Virginia Hunt married Thomas Blackwell, Dallas oil executive, 4 years ago. Blackwell became seriously ill after 5 months. Family intervened and had food tested. Traces of arsenic found. Virginia disappeared before police could question her. No charges filed due to insufficient evidence. Attached were photos of Victoria, then Virginia, with Thomas Blackwell at their wedding. She looked exactly the same, except with dark hair. As Jonathan stared at the photos, Victoria entered their bedroom wearing a silk nightgown. Darling, I've been thinking, she said, sitting beside him. Let's take a trip. Just us. Maybe Switzerland? We could stay for months, maybe even look at moving there. What about your charity work here? Jonathan asked. We can do good anywhere. Victoria traced her finger down his arm. I've always wanted to live in Europe. And you could sell your company. You have enough money. We don't need to work. Jonathan forced a smile. Let me think about it. Don't think too long, Victoria said, her eyes cold despite her smile. I've already been looking at flights. Later, Jonathan slipped out to the garden with his phone and called Rachel. I think she's planning to leave, he said quietly. She wants us to go to Switzerland. Don't go anywhere with her, Rachel warned. I've found solid connections to 3 wealthy men who died or nearly died after marrying her. I'm contacting the Seattle police tomorrow about reopening the Prescott case. As Jonathan ended the call and turned back toward the house, he noticed a new text message from an unknown number. Is it done yet? He realized with horror that it wasn't his phone. It was Victoria's. She must have forgotten it in the garden earlier. The screen locked before he could see more. Jonathan placed the phone exactly where he found it and went back inside, wondering who was waiting for Victoria to complete whatever she had planned for him. Jonathan carefully placed Victoria's phone back on the garden table. His heart raced as he went inside the house, pretending he hadn't seen the mysterious text message. That night, he barely slept, listening to Victoria's breathing beside him and wondering who had sent that message. The next morning at breakfast, Victoria was unusually cheerful. Darling, I have wonderful news, she said, pouring him coffee. My cousin Mark is coming to visit. He'll stay with us for a few days. Jonathan watched her add sugar to his coffee. I didn't know you had a cousin. There's still so much about my family you don't know. Victoria smiled. He's arriving tomorrow. You'll love him. Jonathan pretended to sip his coffee. Looking forward to it. Later that day, Jonathan met Rachel Dawson in a parking garage in Stamford. She handed him a thick folder. Your wife has been busy, Rachel said. I found financial records showing she's transferred over $2 million to Cayman Island accounts in the past month. Jonathan opened the folder. What about the text message I saw? The number belongs to a burner phone, impossible to trace. Rachel showed him a photograph. This is Michael Donovan, ex-con with fraud convictions in 3 states. Does he look familiar? Jonathan stared at the photo of a handsome man with dark hair. No. Should he? He's worked with Victoria before. In Dallas, he posed as her financial advisor while she was married to Thomas Blackwell. Victoria said her cousin Mark is visiting tomorrow. Rachel's expression hardened. That's not her cousin. That's Michael Donovan. Jonathan felt sick. What should I do? Keep gathering evidence and warn your staff about Victoria, especially Tasha. When Jonathan returned home, he found Victoria in the kitchen with Mrs. Daniels, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for him for 12 years. Mrs. Daniels was just telling me she's feeling tired lately, Victoria said. I think she might be getting too old for this job. Mrs. Daniels looked confused. I didn't say that, Mrs. Miller. Victoria laughed lightly. You did, dear. You mentioned your arthritis is getting worse. She turned to Jonathan. We should consider finding someone younger. Mrs. Daniels is part of the family, Jonathan said firmly. She stays as long as she wants. That evening, Jonathan had a video call with William Prescott's parents in Seattle. The elderly couple looked nervous. We've never spoken about this, Mrs. Prescott said. The police said there wasn't enough evidence. Please, Jonathan urged. I need to know what happened to your son. Mr. Prescott sighed. Bill met Vanessa at a charity event. They married 3 months later. She was charming, beautiful, everyone loved her. Then Bill started getting sick, Mrs. Prescott continued. Doctors couldn't figure out why. His organs were failing. Vanessa was always there, bringing him special teas and foods. Did you suspect her? Jonathan asked. Not until later, Mr. Prescott said. After he died, she changed. Cold, businesslike, only interested in his money. She fought us on everything in the will. Then she disappeared, Mrs. Prescott added. We hired a private investigator, but she vanished. After the call, Jonathan sat in his dark office, thinking about Victoria's pattern. Always the same: charm, marriage, illness, death, money, disappear, repeat. The next day, Victoria's cousin, Mark, arrived. Jonathan immediately recognized Michael Donovan from Rachel's photo. Donovan was smooth and friendly, telling stories about a childhood with Victoria that Jonathan knew had never happened. That afternoon, Jonathan discreetly warned Tasha. Be careful around Victoria's cousin, he whispered as they passed in the hallway. He's not who he claims to be. Tasha nodded. Mrs. Miller has been watching me even more closely, and Mr. Mark asked me strange questions about your schedule. Document everything and stay safe. Later, Jonathan noticed Victoria and Mark having an intense whispered conversation in the garden. They stopped talking when they saw him watching. 2 days after Mark's arrival, Jonathan's symptoms suddenly worsened. His headaches returned stronger than before, and he developed a strange rash on his arms. He hadn't eaten anything Victoria prepared, so she must have found another way to poison him. Jonathan asked Tasha to watch Victoria carefully. The next morning, Tasha texted him, Mr. Miller, I saw her adding white powder to the water tank that feeds your bathroom. I recorded it on my phone. Jonathan met Tasha in the laundry room to watch the video. It clearly showed Victoria opening the access panel to his private bathroom's water supply and adding a substance from a small bottle. Get me a sample of that water, Jonathan said. Be careful. That evening at dinner, Victoria was especially attentive. Mark entertained them with stories about his successful investment business in California. You know, Jonathan, Mark said, Victoria tells me you're quite the business genius. I have an opportunity you might be interested in. What kind of opportunity? Jonathan asked. Limited partners for a real estate development in Miami. Guaranteed 20% return in 6 months. Victoria touched Jonathan's hand. Darling, you should consider it. Mark has made so many people wealthy. I'll need to see the paperwork, Jonathan said. Of course, Mark smiled. I have it right here. He pulled out professional-looking documents. Jonathan glanced through them. The investment required $10 million and full signing authority. I'll have my lawyers review these, Jonathan said. Victoria's smile tightened. Don't you trust my family, darling? The next morning, Jonathan caught Victoria going through his office files. Looking for something? he asked from the doorway. Victoria jumped slightly. Just tidying up. You've been so distracted lately. She moved toward him, touching his face. Are you feeling all right? You look pale. I'm fine. You don't look fine. Her fingers traced his cheek. Maybe you should see a doctor. Maybe I will. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. What's happening between us, Jonathan? You're distant, secretive. I could say the same about you. That afternoon, Tasha brought Jonathan a water sample from his bathroom. He sent it to Dr. Freeman for testing while Victoria was shopping. Marcus called him 2 hours later. John, there's arsenic in that water sample. Higher concentration than before. Whoever is doing this is escalating. Jonathan thanked him and hung up. When he turned around, Victoria was standing in his office doorway. Who was that? She asked. Business call. Victoria walked closer. You've been making a lot of private calls lately. She sat on his desk. Mark and I were talking. We think you're working too hard. She smiled. So I've planned a surprise. A second honeymoon in the Maldives. I've already booked the flights. When? Next week. Victoria handed him a folder. I just need you to sign these documents before we go. Power of attorney for while we're away, and some investment papers for Mark. Jonathan took the folder. I'll review them. Victoria leaned forward and kissed him. Don't take too long. The flights are non-refundable. She paused at the door. One-way tickets. I thought we might stay a while. After she left, Jonathan opened the folder. The power of attorney document would give Victoria complete control over all his assets. The investment authorization would transfer $10 million to an offshore account. Jonathan called Rachel immediately. She's accelerating her plan, Rachel said. The Maldives has no extradition treaty with the United States. She's planning to kill you there, or maybe even before you leave. What should I do? Keep stalling. I'm close to convincing William Prescott's family to speak with authorities. We need more evidence before going to the police. That night, Jonathan pretended to be asleep while Victoria and Mark talked in the hallway outside their bedroom. He recorded their conversation on his phone. He's not signing the papers, Victoria whispered angrily. Make him, Mark replied. We have a schedule to keep. I'm trying. He's becoming suspicious. Then increase his dose. We need this done before Seattle reopens the Prescott case. The next morning, Jonathan found Tasha in the kitchen. She looked frightened. Mr. Miller, she whispered, I found something while cleaning Mrs. Miller's yoga room. She showed him photos on her phone of a book hidden under Victoria's yoga mat. The title was Untraceable Poisons, History and Applications. Tasha had photographed pages with notes written in Victoria's handwriting. Keep this evidence safe, Jonathan said, and stay away from Victoria and Mark today. Tasha nodded, her hands trembling. Mr. Miller, I feel worse every day. The doctors say my kidneys are starting to fail. Just a little longer, Tasha. I promise we'll get justice. As Tasha left the kitchen, she stumbled slightly. Jonathan watched her with growing concern, knowing they were both running out of time. Later that afternoon, Jonathan was working in his home office when he heard a crash from the hallway. He rushed out to find Tasha collapsed on the floor, a broken vase beside her. Blood trickled from her nose and ears. Tasha. Jonathan kneeled beside her and checked her pulse. It was weak and irregular. Victoria appeared from the living room. What happened? She asked, her voice concerned but her eyes cold. She's collapsed. I'm calling 911, Jonathan said, pulling out his phone. Victoria placed her hand over his. Darling, she's probably just tired. Let's help her to her room to rest. Jonathan pulled away. She's bleeding from her ears. This is serious. He dialed emergency services. Hello? We need an ambulance at 16 Maple Hill Road in Westport. My housekeeper has collapsed and is unresponsive. Victoria's face hardened momentarily before settling back into a mask of concern. If you think that's necessary, I'll get some towels. As Victoria walked away, Jonathan gently turned Tasha onto her side and loosened her uniform collar. Her breathing was shallow. "Hang on, Tasha," he whispered. "Help is coming." The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. The paramedics worked quickly, checking Tasha's vital signs and placing her on a stretcher. "Blood pressure is dangerously low," one paramedic said. "Pulse irregular. We need to move now." As they loaded Tasha into the ambulance, Victoria grabbed Jonathan's arm. "Should I come with you?" she asked loudly enough for others to hear. "No," Jonathan said firmly. "Stay here. I'll call you from the hospital." Jonathan followed the ambulance in his car, calling Dr. Freeman on the way. "Marcus, they're bringing Tasha Williams to Westport General. Collapsed, bleeding from nose and ears. Can you meet us there?" "I'm on my way," Marcus replied. "I'll alert the ER to test for arsenic poisoning." At the hospital, doctors rushed Tasha directly into emergency treatment. A nurse directed Jonathan to a waiting area where he paced anxiously until Marcus arrived 20 minutes later. "I've spoken with the attending physician," Marcus said. "They're running toxicology tests and trying to stabilize her." "How bad is it?" Jonathan asked. "Critical. Her kidneys and liver are showing signs of significant damage. This level of poisoning—" Marcus shook his head. "John, someone wanted her dead." A hospital social worker approached them. "Mr. Miller, we found Miss Williams' emergency contact information. Her mother has been notified and is on her way." "Elaine Williams?" Jonathan asked. "Does she need transportation?" "She's arranged medical transport due to her condition." An hour later, a hospital orderly wheeled Elaine Williams into the waiting area. She was a thin woman in her early 50s, her body twisted by multiple sclerosis, but her eyes were sharp and alert. Jonathan introduced himself. "So you're the famous Mr. Miller," Elaine said, studying him carefully. "Tasha talks about you and your wife a lot." "All good things, I hope," Jonathan said, sitting beside her wheelchair. "About you, yes. About your wife." Elaine's voice trailed off. "How is my daughter?" "The doctors are doing everything they can," Jonathan said. "Mrs. Williams, there's something you should know. I believe Tasha has been poisoned, and I think my wife is responsible." Elaine didn't look surprised. "Tasha told me she suspected someone was making her sick. She's been saving samples of food and drinks at our neighbor's apartment." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photo album. "This was my daughter before she started working for you." The photos showed a healthier, happier Tasha in a nursing school uniform, smiling with classmates. "She was studying to be a nurse?" Jonathan asked. "She had a scholarship." "Top of her class," Elaine said proudly. "Then I got worse. Couldn't manage alone anymore. Tasha dropped everything to take care of me." Elaine's eyes filled with tears. "She works so hard, takes care of everything, never complains." A doctor approached them. "Mr. Miller? I'm Dr. Patel. Ms. Williams is stabilized but in critical condition. Initial toxicology shows extremely high levels of arsenic in her system." "Will she recover?" Elaine asked, her voice trembling. "We're doing everything possible," Dr. Patel said. "But the poisoning appears to have been happening over months. There's significant organ damage." As they spoke, Victoria swept into the waiting room carrying a tray of coffee cups and wearing a perfectly concerned expression. "I brought coffee for everyone," she announced. "Any news about poor Tasha?" Jonathan noticed how Victoria's eyes darted to the doctor, seemingly more interested in his response than in Tasha's well-being. "Mrs. Miller," Dr. Patel said, "preliminary tests indicate arsenic poisoning. Do you know if Miss Williams would have been exposed to arsenic in your home?" Victoria's face registered perfect shock. "Arsenic? How terrible. We don't keep any chemicals like that in our home. Do we, Jonathan?" "The police will want to speak with everyone in the household," Dr. Patel continued. "This appears to be a case of deliberate poisoning." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "You don't think someone did this on purpose? That's horrible." She sat next to Elaine. "Mrs. Williams, I'm so sorry about your daughter. We'll do everything to help." Elaine looked at Victoria with undisguised suspicion, but said nothing. 2 hours later, Detective Michael Torres from the Westport Police Department arrived. He interviewed Jonathan first in a private consultation room. "Dr. Freeman has shared his concerns with me," Torres said. "He mentioned you've also shown signs of arsenic poisoning." "Yes," Jonathan confirmed. "I've been gathering evidence." He showed Torres the videos of Victoria adding powder to his bathroom water supply and Tasha's food. Torres studied the footage carefully. "This is compelling but not definitive. We need the substance identified as arsenic to make an arrest." As they spoke, a nurse knocked on the door. "Detective?" The lab confirmed the substance in Ms. Williams' system is indeed arsenic. Levels consistent with long-term exposure with recent increases. Torres nodded. "I'll need to speak with Mrs. Miller next." When Victoria entered the room for her interview, Jonathan waited in the hallway. Through the glass panel in the door, he could see Victoria gesturing emotionally, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. After 20 minutes, Victoria emerged, looking distressed, followed by a thoughtful Detective Torres. "What did she say?" Jonathan asked when Victoria was out of earshot. "Your wife suggested Ms. Williams might have poisoned herself," Torres replied. "For attention or insurance money, she pointed out that Miss Williams had access to all food and cleaning supplies in the house." "That's ridiculous," Jonathan said. "She also mentioned that you've been acting strangely lately, installing cameras without telling her, making secret phone calls." Torres studied Jonathan carefully. "Care to explain that?" "I suspected she was poisoning us. I needed evidence." Torres nodded. "We'll need to search your property." As they spoke, a commotion erupted down the hallway. Victoria was trying to enter Tasha's room despite a nurse blocking her way. "I just want to see how she's doing," Victoria insisted loudly. "I'm her employer. I care about her." Security guards approached as Victoria's voice rose. "This is outrageous. I've done nothing wrong." Detective Torres moved quickly toward the scene. As security escorted Victoria away from Tasha's room, she locked eyes with Jonathan across the hallway. "This is all a misunderstanding," she called out. "Someone is trying to frame me." As Victoria was led to the waiting area, Jonathan noticed she had managed to glimpse Tasha's medical chart during the commotion. Jonathan pulled Detective Torres aside. "You need to protect Tasha. Victoria is dangerous." Torres nodded. "I'm posting an officer outside her room. We'll also need protection for you, Mr. Miller." "What about Elaine Williams? If Victoria feels cornered, she might target her too." Torres immediately dispatched an officer to stay with Elaine, who was now sitting beside her unconscious daughter's bed. Jonathan called Rachel from a quiet corner of the hospital. "Tasha's in critical condition." Torres is investigating, but Victoria is already trying to deflect blame. "I have news," Rachel replied. "William Prescott's family in Seattle has agreed to speak with authorities. They're sending their original suspicions and evidence about Victoria, then Vanessa, to Detective Torres right now." "Good. We need to move quickly. Victoria knows we're on to her." As Jonathan ended the call, he turned to find Victoria standing directly behind him, her face a mask of fury that quickly transformed into concern when a nurse walked by. "Who were you talking to, darling?" she asked sweetly. "My office," Jonathan lied, updating them on the situation. Victoria moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you're so clever, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." Before Jonathan could respond, Victoria created a loud scene in the middle of the hospital corridor, accusing Jonathan of invading her privacy with cameras and making wild accusations against her. "My husband needs help," she shouted as security approached again. "He's been acting paranoid for weeks, making up crazy stories." As security escorted Victoria from the building, she looked back at Jonathan with cold hatred in her eyes and mouthed words only he could see. "You'll be joining her soon." Jonathan watched as hospital security led Victoria away. Her threat echoed in his mind. He turned to Detective Torres. "I can't go home," Jonathan said. "She'll try to kill me." Torres nodded. "We don't have enough to arrest her yet. The evidence is strong but circumstantial." He lowered his voice. You should stay somewhere safe until we build a stronger case." An hour later, Jonathan checked into the Westport Marriott under the name David Cohen. He paid cash and asked for a room away from the elevator. Once inside, he pulled the curtains closed and called Rachel. "I'm at a hotel," he said. "Victoria knows I'm on to her." "Good decision," Rachel replied. "I'm driving to Westport now. I have important information from Seattle." While waiting for Rachel, Jonathan called Dr. Freeman for an update on Tasha. "She's still unconscious," Marcus said. "The doctors are doing dialysis to remove the arsenic from her system, but her kidneys are badly damaged." "Will she recover?" "It's too early to tell. Her mother is with her now. The police have an officer outside her door." Rachel arrived at 7 that evening. She knocked on Jonathan's door with a specific pattern they had agreed on. When he opened the door, she handed him a thick file. "The Prescott family kept everything," Rachel said, sitting in the desk chair. "They suspected Victoria, from the beginning, but couldn't prove anything." Jonathan opened the file. Inside were photos of Victoria with William Prescott, medical records, and handwritten statements from the family. "Look at this," Rachel pointed to a medical report. "William's symptoms match yours and Tasha's exactly. Fatigue, headaches, stomach issues, then organ failure." "Did they find arsenic?" "Yes, but not until after he died. By then, Victoria had already emptied their accounts and disappeared." Jonathan shook his head. "I can't believe I married a serial killer." "A careful one," Rachel said. "She's never been charged. Always disappears before investigations conclude." She pulled out her laptop. "I found something else. Victoria has been trying to access your accounts. She's made calls to banks in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands." "Has she transferred any money?" "Not yet, but she's booked flights to 3 different countries under 3 different names for next week." Rachel showed him the flight reservations. "She's planning her escape." Jonathan's phone rang. It was Detective Torres. "Miller, we have officers watching your house. Your wife just gave an interview to the local news. She set up a recovery fund for Tasha. She's playing the concerned employer." "It's an act," Jonathan said. "I know, but she's good at it. Half the town thinks she's a saint." Torres paused. "We need to catch her in the act. Do you have any ideas?" Jonathan thought for a moment. "What if I tell her I'm going on a business trip? She might try something when she thinks I'm coming home." "That could work. We'll need cameras in place." The next morning, Jonathan noticed someone watching him in the hotel lobby. He quickly went out through a side door and walked through the Westport shopping center to lose them. Once he was sure no one was following, he called Victoria. "Darling, where are you?" Victoria asked, her voice sweet with concern. "I was so worried when you didn't come home last night." "I stayed at a hotel," Jonathan said. "I needed time to think." "About what?" "These ridiculous accusations? Jonathan, I would never hurt you or Tasha." "We'll talk later. I have to go to San Francisco for business. I'll be back tomorrow night." "So sudden. What business?" "Cyber Shield business. Confidential." Jonathan kept his voice flat. "I'll call you from the airport." After hanging up, Jonathan met with his lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, in her New York office. "I want to transfer control of Cyber Shield to my COO temporarily," Jonathan explained, "and change my will. Remove Victoria completely." Sarah looked concerned. "Is everything okay, Jonathan?" "No, my wife is trying to kill me." He showed her the evidence they had gathered. Sarah's eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. "This is unbelievable. I'll prepare the papers immediately." That afternoon, Jonathan checked into Westport General Hospital under the name Thomas Green. Detective Torres had arranged everything: a private room, security, and cameras to monitor the Miller house. "We have officers watching your home," Torres explained in Jonathan's hospital room. "We installed additional cameras in your kitchen this morning while Victoria was at her yoga class." "Will that hold up in court?" "You didn't have a warrant. We do now." Torres showed Jonathan the document. Judge signed it an hour ago based on the evidence from Seattle and the arsenic in your water system. A police technician set up monitors showing different angles of Jonathan's house. One camera focused on the kitchen, another on the entrances. At 6 that evening, Jonathan called Victoria again. "I'm boarding my flight now," he lied. "I'll be home around 9 tomorrow morning." "I'll prepare a special welcome home dinner," Victoria said. "Just the two of us." "Sounds perfect. I miss you." "I miss you too, darling. Everything will be better when you're home." After hanging up, Jonathan turned to Torres. "She's planning something." The next morning, they watched Victoria on the monitors. She moved around the kitchen, preparing what looked like pasta, Jonathan's favorite dish. At 8:30, she took a small bottle from her pocket and added a white powder to the sauce, stirring it thoroughly. "There it is," Torres said, picking up his radio. "All units move in now." Jonathan watched as police cars pulled up to his house. Officers approached from all sides. Torres turned to Jonathan. "Stay here. We'll bring her in." 20 minutes later, Torres called. "She's gone. The house is empty." "What? She was just there." "She must have seen us coming. The back door was open. Her car is gone." Jonathan felt cold fear spread through him. "Check on Elaine Williams." "Now." Torres called the officer stationed at Tasha and Elaine's apartment building in Bridgeport. There was a long pause. Torres's face darkened. "The officer isn't responding. I'm sending units there now." 5 minutes later, Torres called back. "The officer was drugged. Elaine Williams is gone. And there's a note." He read it slowly. "Jonathan, if you want to see Tasha's mother alive again, come alone to the address below. Tell the police and she dies. Where does it say to go?" An address on the Long Island Sound. Some kind of boathouse. Rachel was already typing on her laptop. "I know that place. Victoria's second husband owned it. It wasn't in any official records, but I found it in their tax documents." Jonathan stood up. "I have to go." Torres blocked the door. "Absolutely not. This is a hostage situation. We need the tactical team. She'll kill Elaine if she sees police. She'll kill you if you go alone." Jonathan's phone rang. Unknown number. "Put it on speaker," Torres said. Jonathan answered. "Hello?" "Hello, darling." Victoria's voice was calm. "Missing something? Or should I say someone? If you hurt Elaine..." "Hurt her? Why would I hurt her? She's my insurance policy." Victoria laughed softly. $10 million transferred to the account I texted you. A private plane at Westport Airport. You have 1 hour. Let me speak to Elaine." There was rustling, then Elaine's frightened voice. "Jonathan? She has a syringe. She says it's poison." Victoria came back on the line. 1 hour, Jonathan. Come alone or she dies." The call ended. Torres immediately began organizing a tactical response. "The boathouse is isolated, surrounded by water on 3 sides," he explained, showing Jonathan the satellite images. "Limited access points. We can position snipers on the adjacent properties. She'll see you coming. Not if we're careful, but we need time to set up. You need to stall her." Jonathan nodded. "I'll tell her I'm arranging the money. It will take time to move that much cash." Rachel approached with her laptop. "I found the building plans for the boathouse. There's a small rear entrance that might not be visible from inside." As they prepared, a nurse burst into the room. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Williams is awake. She's asking for you." Jonathan rushed to Tasha's room. She was pale and weak, but her eyes were alert. She grabbed his hand when he approached. "My mother," she whispered. "Is she okay?" Jonathan looked at Torres, who nodded slightly. "Victoria has taken your mother," Jonathan said gently. "We're doing everything possible to save her." Tasha tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "I need to help. Mom can't handle stress. Her MS gets worse." "You need to rest," Jonathan insisted. "The police are handling it." Tasha gripped his hand tighter. "You don't understand. Mom needs specific medications at specific times. If she misses them..." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, I need to be there." Torres shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. You're in no condition to leave the hospital. As they argued, hospital staff prepared the tactical team with medical information about Elaine's condition. Jonathan's phone rang again. Victoria. "Time's running out, Jonathan," she said. "Where's my money?" "I'm working on it," he replied. "Banks don't move $10 million instantly. I need more time. You have 30 minutes, then I use the syringe." The call ended. Torres turned to Jonathan. "We're ready. The tactical team is moving into position now." Jonathan stared at the satellite image of the boathouse where Victoria was holding Elaine hostage. The trap had been set, but not the one he had planned. Now they were all caught in Victoria's deadly game. Jonathan stared at the satellite image of the boathouse while Detective Torres organized the tactical team. The abandoned structure sat isolated at the edge of Long Island Sound, surrounded by water on 3 sides with a single dirt road for access. "We have 25 minutes before Victoria's deadline," Torres said, checking his watch. "The tactical team is almost in position." Jonathan's phone rang again. "It's her," he said, answering on speaker. "Have you made the transfer yet?" Victoria demanded. "The bank is processing it now," Jonathan lied. "These things take time." "You're stalling," Victoria's voice hardened. "Let me give you some motivation." They heard Elaine whimper in the background. "Stop!" Jonathan shouted. "I'm coming!" "Just don't hurt her." "Wise choice," Victoria said. "Remember, alone. I'll know if the police are with you." The call ended. Torres shook his head firmly. "You're not going in there." "I have to buy you time to get in position," Jonathan argued. "She trusts me to follow her instructions. I can keep her talking while your team moves in." Torres considered this. "We can wire you, but you don't engage unless absolutely necessary." As they prepared to leave, a nurse rushed into the room. "Ms. Williams is gone. She's not in her room." "What?" Torres spun around. "How is that possible?" There was an officer at her door. He stepped away for 2 minutes to use the restroom. When he came back, she was gone. She left her IV drip behind. Jonathan groaned. "She's going after her mother." "We need to move now," Torres said, grabbing his radio. "All units be advised, we have a civilian potentially approaching the target location." 20 minutes later, Jonathan sat in an unmarked police car near the boathouse. He wore a bulletproof vest under his shirt and a wire taped to his chest. Torres gave him final instructions. "Keep her talking. Find out where Elaine is exactly. Don't be a hero." He handed Jonathan an earpiece. "We'll be listening. If we say abort, you get down on the floor immediately." Jonathan nodded and stepped out of the car. The boathouse loomed ahead, a weathered wooden structure with peeling gray paint. As he approached, he could see the water gently lapping against the pilings beneath it. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Front door. Hands visible." Jonathan walked slowly toward the entrance, holding his hands out to show he was unarmed. The door creaked open before he reached it. "Inside," Victoria called. "Close the door behind you." Jonathan entered the dim interior. It took a few seconds for his eyes to adjust. The boathouse was one large room with windows overlooking the water. Dust covered most surfaces, and the air smelled of mildew and salt. Victoria stood in the center, holding a syringe against Elaine Williams' neck. Elaine sat terrified in her wheelchair, her eyes wide with fear. "Hello, darling," Victoria said, her voice unnaturally calm. "So good of you to join us." "Let her go," Jonathan said. "This is between you and me." Victoria laughed. "Is that what you think? That this is personal?" She shook her head. "This is business, Jonathan. It's always been business." "The money's being transferred," Jonathan lied. "You'll have it soon. Then you can leave." "Oh, I will leave, but not quite yet." Victoria smiled, her eyes cold. "First, I want you to understand how completely you've been played." Outside, the tactical team moved silently into position. Torres whispered into his radio as snipers set up on adjacent properties and officers approached from the water in silent boats. Inside, Victoria circled Elaine's wheelchair, keeping the syringe near her neck. "Do you want to know how I chose you, Jonathan?" Victoria asked. "You weren't random. After Thomas Blackwell's family interrupted my work in Dallas, I needed a new target. Someone wealthy, of course, but also isolated. Few family connections. No one to ask too many questions. So you researched me. For months, I studied everything about you. Your habits, your preferences, your weaknesses." Victoria smiled. "Then I arranged our chance meeting at that charity gala. You thought you approached me, didn't you? That it was your idea?" Jonathan remembered that night, how Victoria had seemed to appear exactly when he was getting a drink, how they'd discovered shared interests. "Everything was calculated," Victoria continued. "Your favorite foods, your favorite music, even the books on my nightstand were chosen to appeal to you." "Why?" Jonathan asked, trying to keep her talking while watching for any chance to help Elaine. "Why go through all this? Money, of course, but also—" Victoria's eyes gleamed. "The challenge, the rush of controlling someone so completely they hand over everything while thanking you for it." In the earpiece, Jonathan heard Torres. "Keep her talking." 2 more minutes. "What about Tasha?" Jonathan asked. "Why poison her?" Victoria's face darkened. "She was getting too observant. I saw her watching me one day when I was adding arsenic to your coffee. Then she started looking through my things." She pressed the syringe closer to Elaine's neck, causing the older woman to whimper. Stupid girl should have minded her own business. "Please," Elaine begged. "I need my medication, my MS." "Shut up," Victoria snapped. "You'll get your medicine when I get my money." She turned back to Jonathan. "Speaking of money, where is it?" "You've had enough time." "The transfer is processing," Jonathan said. "International transfers take time. You know that." Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, then smiled at Jonathan. "That's my associate confirming there's been no transfer." She raised the syringe. "You lied to me." "Wait," Jonathan stepped forward. "I can call the bank right now, speed things up." "Too late for that," Victoria said. "I gave you a chance to do this the easy way." As Victoria moved the syringe closer to Elaine's neck, a noise came from outside one of the windows. Victoria whipped around, momentarily distracted. There, pale and shaking in her hospital gown, stood Tasha Williams. She had dragged herself to the window, an IV pole still attached to her arm. Her face was ghostly white, but her eyes burned with determination. "Mom," she called weakly through the glass. "I'm here." Victoria's attention shifted for just a split second, but it was enough. The momentary distraction caused her to move the syringe away from Elaine's neck. In Jonathan's earpiece, Torres shouted, "Now!" A shot rang out. The syringe in Victoria's hand shattered, sending glass and liquid spraying. Victoria screamed in shock, dropping the remains of the syringe and reaching for something in her pocket. The doors burst open as tactical officers swarmed in from multiple entrances. Jonathan dove toward Elaine, pushing her wheelchair away from Victoria as officers tackled his wife to the ground. "Don't move! Police!" they shouted, restraining Victoria as she thrashed and screamed. Jonathan rushed to Elaine, wheeling her toward the door while chaos erupted behind them. Outside, medical personnel were already tending to Tasha, who had collapsed again after creating her crucial distraction. "My daughter," Elaine kept saying. "Is she okay?" "She's getting help," Jonathan assured her, though he was shocked by Tasha's condition. Her hospital gown was stained with blood, where she had torn out her IV. She must have taken a taxi or somehow made her way to the boathouse despite her critical condition. Paramedics loaded both Elaine and Tasha into separate ambulances. As they prepared to leave, Jonathan approached Tasha's stretcher. "You saved your mother," he said, taking her hand. "That was incredibly brave." Tasha's eyes fluttered open briefly. "Had to help," she whispered. "Family is everything." Inside the boathouse, Victoria was being led out in handcuffs. When she saw Jonathan, she stopped, forcing the officers to halt. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and threatening. You have no idea how many people still work for me. Take her away, Torres ordered, and the officers resumed moving her toward the waiting police car. As Victoria was placed in the back seat, Jonathan noticed a small smile playing on her lips despite her situation. It sent a chill through him, the smile of someone who still had cards to play. Torres approached Jonathan, looking both relieved and concerned. "We got her," he said, "but that was too close. Tasha could have been killed pulling that stunt." "She saved her mother's life," Jonathan replied, "and probably mine too. We found 3 more syringes in Victoria's pocket, all filled with what looks like the same poison." Torres shook his head. "She was planning to kill all of you." As the police car carrying Victoria drove away, Jonathan watched the ambulances leaving with Tasha and Elaine. The immediate danger had passed, but Victoria's final words echoed in his mind. If she truly had other accomplices, none of them were truly safe yet. "I want protection for Tasha and her mother at the hospital," Jonathan told Torres. "Around the clock." Torres nodded. "Already arranged. And you should stay under protection too, at least until we're sure Victoria doesn't have anyone else working with her." Jonathan looked back at the boathouse where crime scene technicians were now collecting evidence. The trap had worked, but at a terrible cost. Now they needed to ensure Victoria could never hurt anyone again. Jonathan stayed by Tasha's side as the ambulance raced back to Westport General Hospital. Her condition had worsened after her desperate journey to the boathouse. The paramedics worked frantically, attaching monitors and starting new IV lines. "BP dropping," one paramedic called out. "Heart rate irregular." "Hang in there, Tasha," Jonathan whispered. "You saved your mother. Now let us save you." At the hospital, doctors rushed Tasha directly to intensive care. Elaine arrived in a separate ambulance, immediately asking about her daughter. Jonathan waited with her in a private room guarded by a police officer. "Will she be okay?" Elaine asked, her hands trembling. "The doctors are doing everything they can," Jonathan said. "Tasha is strong." Detective Torres arrived an hour later, his face grim but determined. "Victoria is in custody," he reported. "We found extensive evidence in the boathouse, poisons, detailed notes on dosages, research on you and your company. She was thorough." "What happens now?" Jonathan asked. "She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Multiple charges: attempted murder, poisoning, kidnapping, assault." Torres sat down. "We've contacted authorities in Seattle, Chicago, and Dallas. They're reopening their investigations into her previous husbands." The next morning, Jonathan watched from the back of a courtroom as Victoria Harrington Miller was led in wearing handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. Gone was the elegant socialite. Her hair hung limp, and without makeup she looked older. But her eyes remained cold and calculating as she surveyed the room. The judge read the charges: 3 counts of attempted murder in the first degree, kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, identity fraud. Victoria pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her court-appointed attorney requested bail, which the judge immediately denied. The defendant poses an extreme flight risk, with multiple identities and offshore accounts, the judge stated, remanded to custody without bail. As Victoria was led away, she spotted Jonathan. Her expression never changed, but she held his gaze until she disappeared through the door. Back at the hospital, Jonathan found Dr. Freeman consulting with Tasha's medical team. "How is she?" Jonathan asked. "Critical but stable," Marcus replied. "The arsenic caused significant damage to her kidneys and liver. She'll need dialysis until we determine if the damage is permanent." "And Elaine?" "Physically fine but traumatized. Her MS symptoms have flared due to the stress." Jonathan nodded. "I want them to have the best care possible, whatever it costs." "Money won't be the issue," Marcus said. "Time will be. And Tasha's determination. She shouldn't have survived what she went through yesterday, much less managed to get to that boathouse. She did it for her mother. That kind of love?" Marcus shook his head in wonder. It's more powerful than any medicine I can prescribe." Over the next week, Jonathan split his time between the hospital and working with Detective Torres. Victoria's hidden storage unit was discovered, containing boxes of research on all her targets, including detailed information about Jonathan's companies, properties, and daily habits. "She had everything," Torres said, showing Jonathan the evidence: "Your schedules, your passwords, even your medical history." One afternoon, Jonathan arrived at the hospital to find visitors with Elaine, an elderly couple who introduced themselves as Robert and Susan Prescott from Seattle. "When we heard what happened," Susan Prescott said, tears in her eyes, "we had to come. Our son William was Victoria's first victim, at least the first we know of." "We never got justice," Robert added. "She disappeared before the police could build a case. But now, with your evidence..." More families arrived in the following days: the Goldmans from Chicago, the Blackwells from Dallas. All had lost loved ones to Victoria's poisoning. All had been left without closure when she vanished. "You and Tasha did what we couldn't," Henry Goldman said, gripping Jonathan's hand. "You caught her." 2 weeks after the arrest, Jonathan received a call from Rachel. "We found Mark, or rather Michael Donovan," she reported. "He was trying to leave the country. Had $50,000 of your money on him. Victoria's accomplice? One of them. He claims there are others, but he's negotiating for a reduced sentence." Jonathan hired additional security for the hospital. As Tasha's condition slowly improved, he began to consider what would happen after she recovered. She and Elaine would need ongoing medical care, a place to live, financial support. One evening, as Jonathan sat beside Tasha's bed while she slept, Sarah Jenkins, his lawyer, visited with documents. "The changes to your will are complete," she said quietly, "and I've drawn up the papers for the foundation you wanted to establish." "Thank you," Jonathan said, signing the documents. "How soon can we launch it?" "Within a month. The Elaine Williams Foundation will be set up to help victims of poisoning and domestic abuse with both medical support and educational opportunities." "And the house in Greenwich?" "Purchased this morning. Fully accessible for Elaine's wheelchair, close to the best MS treatment center in Connecticut." Jonathan looked at Tasha's sleeping form. She gave up her nursing education to care for her mother. "I want the foundation to help others in similar situations." 3 weeks after her arrest, Victoria's preliminary hearing began. Jonathan testified about the hidden cameras, the poisoned food, and Victoria's confession at the boathouse. Forensic experts confirmed the presence of arsenic in samples from Jonathan's home, matching the poison found in Victoria's possession. Victoria sat motionless throughout the testimony, her face expressionless. Her attorney tried to suggest she suffered from mental illness and was herself a victim of abuse in her childhood. "My client needs treatment, not imprisonment," the lawyer argued. The judge disagreed, finding sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on all charges. After the hearing, Jonathan visited Tasha, who was now awake for longer periods, though still weak. "They found enough evidence to put her on trial," he told her. Tasha nodded slowly. "Good. She needs to pay for what she did to all those people." She hesitated. "And what she tried to do to us." "How are you feeling?" "Better. The doctors say I can start physical therapy next week." Tasha attempted a smile. "They also said something about a new house?" Jonathan nodded. "For you and your mother. It's near an excellent MS treatment center." Tears filled Tasha's eyes. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe us anything." "I brought Victoria into your life," Jonathan said, "and you saved me from her, but it's more than that." He paused. "You showed incredible courage and sacrifice for your mother. That deserves recognition." "I was just doing what anyone would do." "No, Tasha. Not everyone would continue working while being poisoned to maintain health insurance for their mother. Not everyone would drag themselves from a hospital bed to create a distraction that saved lives." Jonathan explained his plans for the Elaine Williams Foundation, how it would help others in situations similar to hers. "We'll need an executive director when you're recovered," he finished. Someone who understands both the medical aspects and the human cost. Tasha's eyes widened. Me? But I didn't even finish nursing school. The foundation will also provide educational opportunities. You can complete your degree while helping others. As they talked, a nurse entered with news that Victoria had attempted suicide in prison. They think it was a ploy to get transferred to a psychiatric facility with less security. Did she succeed? Tasha asked. In the suicide? Number? In getting transferred? Also number. They saw through it. The next day, Jonathan visited Dr. Freeman for his final checkup. The arsenic had cleared from his system, and his health was returning to normal. Physically, you're fine, Marcus said. Emotionally might take longer. I trusted her completely, Jonathan admitted. Now I don't know if I can ever trust anyone again. Not everyone is Victoria, Marcus replied. Look at Tasha. Look at how much she sacrificed for her mother. There are good people in the world, John. A month after Victoria's arrest, Tasha was released from the hospital. Though still requiring ongoing treatment and physical therapy, she could continue her recovery as an outpatient. Jonathan arranged for both Tasha and Elaine to move into the Greenwich house he had purchased for them. When they arrived, Tasha gasped at the beautiful, accessible home with its garden view and state-of-the-art medical equipment. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's not enough," Jonathan replied, "but it's a start." As they settled in for their first meal in the new house, Jonathan's phone rang. It was Detective Torres. "We have a situation," Torres said, his voice tense. "Victoria managed to smuggle a letter out of prison. It appears to be coded instructions to someone on the outside." Jonathan looked at Tasha and Elaine, finally safe in their new home, and felt cold fear return. Victoria's last words to him echoed in his mind. "This isn't over. You have no idea how many people still work for me." Jonathan hung up the phone, his face pale. "What is it?" Tasha asked, noticing his expression. "Victoria sent a coded letter from prison," Jonathan explained. "Detective Torres thinks she's communicating with someone on the outside." Tasha's hand trembled as she set down her fork. "She still has people working for her?" "Possibly. Torres is bringing officers to watch the house tonight." The protective detail arrived within 30 minutes, 2 police officers who would rotate shifts outside the house. Detective Torres joined Jonathan in the living room while Tasha helped Elaine get settled in her new bedroom. "The letter was intercepted by a guard," Torres explained. "It was supposedly going to a cousin, but the address doesn't exist." Torres showed Jonathan a photocopy. The letter appeared innocent, asking about family members and discussing prison life, but certain phrases were underlined subtly. "Our cryptography expert thinks it's a simple substitution code," Torres continued. "We're working on breaking it now." "What happens when you do?" Jonathan asked. "We find whoever it was meant for before they can act on whatever instructions she gave them." For the next week, Jonathan divided his time between setting up security systems at Tasha and Elaine's new home, working with his lawyers on the foundation, and assisting the authorities with their investigation of Victoria. The media had become obsessed with the case, dubbing Victoria the sandbox poisoner after learning about Tasha's pica condition. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, Jonathan's estate, and even tried to locate Tasha and Elaine's new home. "This attention is exactly what Victoria wants," Rachel Dawson said during a strategy meeting at Jonathan's house. "She thrives on being the center of attention." "Can we use that against her?" Jonathan asked. Rachel nodded. "We might. Narcissists often make mistakes when they think they're smarter than everyone else." 2 days later, Torres called with news. "We cracked the code," he said. "It was instructions to someone named James to access a storage unit in Boston. We set up surveillance and arrested a man retrieving items yesterday." "What did he have?" Jonathan asked. "Cash, fake IDs, and detailed information about you, Tasha, and the hospital where she was treated." Jonathan felt cold. Was he planning to hurt Tasha? We're still questioning him, but it appears his job was surveillance, not attack. He claims Victoria has others for more important tasks. That evening, Jonathan visited Tasha and Elaine for dinner. Tasha was moving better but still needed a cane to walk. Her medical treatments continued 3 times weekly and dialysis twice a week. "The doctors say my kidney function is improving," Tasha reported as they ate. "I might not need permanent dialysis after all." "That's wonderful news," Jonathan said. Elaine smiled at her daughter. "And my new neurologist thinks this treatment plan might actually improve my mobility, not just stop the progression." After dinner, Jonathan showed them the architectural plans for the Elaine Williams Foundation headquarters in downtown Westport. "Construction starts next week," he explained. "The first floor will have medical consultation rooms for victims of poisoning. The second floor will house educational programs." Tasha studied the plans carefully. "It's amazing, but I still don't understand why you named it after Mom instead of yourself." "Because your mother raised someone willing to sacrifice everything for family," Jonathan said. "That kind of courage should be recognized." 3 days later, Victoria appeared in court for another hearing. She had lost weight in prison, and her usually perfect appearance had deteriorated, but her eyes remained calculating as she surveyed the courtroom. The prosecutor presented new evidence. "Your Honor, authorities in Seattle have officially reopened the investigation into William Prescott's death and have determined it was murder by poisoning. Chicago and Dallas are pursuing similar findings in their jurisdictions." Victoria's attorney attempted to argue that events in other states weren't relevant to the current charges. The judge disagreed, allowing the evidence. After the hearing, Jonathan spoke with the prosecutor, Diane Matthews. "How strong is your case?" he asked. "Very strong," Matthews replied. "Between the video evidence, the forensic analysis, and the testimony from you and Tasha, Victoria is looking at multiple life sentences." "Will Tasha have to testify at the trial?" "Most likely. Her experience is central to our case." Jonathan worried about the stress this would place on Tasha's recovery. When he mentioned this concern to her the next day, she straightened her shoulders. "I want to testify," she said firmly. "I want to look her in the eyes when I tell the jury what she did to me." 2 weeks later, Jonathan received an unexpected call from Torres. "We found Victoria's storage unit." The big one, not the decoy we discovered earlier. Jonathan met Torres at the police station, where boxes of evidence from Victoria's storage unit filled a conference room. There were files on at least a dozen wealthy men from across the country, potential victims Victoria had researched but hadn't approached yet. "She was planning this for years," Torres explained. "Each target was carefully researched: daily routines, medical history, financial information." Jonathan picked up a thick folder with his name on it. Inside were photographs of him going back 5 years, detailed notes about his habits, even medical records that should have been confidential. "How did she get all this?" he asked. "She had help. Professional help." Torres pointed to financial records. "She paid over $500,000 to private investigators, hackers, even a nurse at your doctor's office." As Victoria's trial approached, the families of her previous victims arrived in Connecticut. They gathered one evening at Jonathan's home: the Prescotts from Seattle, the Goldmans from Chicago, the Blackwells from Dallas. Each shared stories of their loved ones and how Victoria had entered their lives. "William was always cautious," Mrs. Prescott said, "but Victoria, Vanessa then, completely charmed him." "Henry was the same," Mrs. Goldman added. "She knew exactly what he wanted to hear." "Thomas was lucky," Mr. Blackwell said. "My sister noticed the symptoms before it was too late." But Victoria disappeared before police could arrest her. Jonathan listened to their stories, seeing the same pattern repeated with each family. Victoria targeted successful, somewhat isolated men, swept them off their feet with a whirlwind romance, then systematically poisoned them while isolating them from concerned family members. "Why did none of us see it coming?" Jonathan asked. Because she's very good at what she does, Mr. Blackwell replied. And because no one wants to believe someone they love is trying to kill them. The next morning, Jonathan visited the construction site of the Elaine Williams Foundation. Workers were finishing the exterior while others installed specialized medical equipment inside. "We'll be ready to open in 2 months," the project manager reported. Jonathan nodded with satisfaction. The foundation would provide both immediate medical help for poisoning victims and long-term support for their recovery. It would also fund research into better detection and treatment methods. That afternoon, he went to Westport General Hospital for a meeting with Dr. Freeman. The hospital had agreed to partner with the foundation, creating a specialized treatment wing for poison victims. "We're calling it the Elaine Williams Treatment Wing," Marcus explained. The hospital board approved it unanimously after hearing Tasha's story. As they discussed the project, a nurse rushed in. "Dr. Freeman, Ms. Williams just arrived by ambulance. She collapsed during her physical therapy session." Jonathan and Marcus raced to the emergency room. Tasha lay unconscious on a gurney, medical staff working frantically around her. "What happened?" Jonathan demanded. "Her blood tests show an unknown toxin," a doctor replied. "Not arsenic this time. Something else." Jonathan froze. Victoria has someone else working for her. Someone got to Tasha. Torres arrived within minutes after Jonathan's call. He immediately placed officers at Tasha's door and sent a team to secure Elaine, who was at home with her nurse. "How could this happen?" Jonathan asked. "You arrested Victoria's accomplice." "One of them," Torres corrected. "She clearly has others." As doctors worked to identify the poison and treat Tasha, Jonathan paced the waiting room. His phone rang. Rachel Dawson. "Jonathan, we identified the person who was supposed to receive Victoria's coded letter," she said urgently. "It's Tasha's physical therapist. He changed his name, but he used to work for Victoria in Chicago." "Tasha's been poisoned again," Jonathan said. "We need to find this therapist now." Police arrested the therapist at his apartment that evening. They found poison vials matching the substance in Tasha's system, along with detailed instructions in Victoria's handwriting. The next morning, Tasha regained consciousness. The doctors had identified the poison in time, and she was expected to recover, though her already damaged system faced another difficult healing process. Jonathan sat beside her bed, holding her hand. "I'm so sorry," he said. "We should have checked everyone who had contact with you." Tasha's voice was weak but determined. "Not your fault. Victoria is the only one to blame." As they talked, Torres entered the room. "The therapist is talking," he reported. "He's given us names of 3 more accomplices. We've arrested 2 already." Jonathan nodded. "And Victoria?" "She's been placed in solitary confinement with no contact with the outside world. No more letters, no phone calls, nothing." Tasha squeezed Jonathan's hand. "Will this ever be over?" "Yes," Jonathan promised. "Victoria will spend the rest of her life in prison, and we'll rebuild our lives stronger than before." The next day, all major newspapers carried the story of Victoria's network of accomplices and her attempt to poison Tasha from prison. Public opinion, already against Victoria, hardened further. The judge denied all pending motions from her defense team and set the trial date for 3 weeks later. Jonathan looked at the newspaper headline, "Sandbox Poisoner Strikes Again from Behind Bars," and wondered how many more surprises Victoria had planned, even as her world crumbled around her. 1 year later, Jonathan sat in the crowded courtroom as the judge delivered Victoria's sentence. The trial had lasted 6 weeks, with testimony from dozens of witnesses, including Tasha, medical experts, and the families of Victoria's previous victims. "Victoria Harrington Miller, this court finds you guilty on all charges," the judge declared. "For your crimes of attempted murder, poisoning, kidnapping, and fraud, I sentence you to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole." Victoria showed no emotion as the sentence was read. She stood straight, her face blank, as if the proceedings had nothing to do with her. Only when the bailiffs approached to lead her away did she finally look at Jonathan. Her eyes were cold and empty. As Victoria was escorted from the courtroom for the last time, Jonathan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The families of her previous victims embraced each other, many crying with relief that justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Jonathan. "Mr. Miller, how do you feel about the verdict?" One called out, "Justice has been served, not just for me and Tasha Williams, but for all of Victoria's victims," Jonathan replied. "Now we can focus on helping others who might face similar situations." Later that day, Jonathan drove to the newly completed Elaine Williams Foundation building in downtown Westport. The modern three-story structure featured large windows and wheelchair-accessible entrances. Inside, staff were preparing for the grand opening the following week. Tasha greeted him in the lobby. She looked healthy now, her strength fully returned after months of treatment and rehabilitation. She walked confidently without a cane, though she still required quarterly medical monitoring. "The final furniture delivery just arrived for the education center," she reported, leading him through the building. "And the medical equipment is all installed and tested." Jonathan smiled. "You've done an amazing job getting everything ready." "I had a good teacher," Tasha replied. "Your experience building CyberShield from nothing helped me understand how to create something meaningful here." They toured the facility together. The first floor contained medical consultation rooms where victims of poisoning could receive immediate care and long-term treatment plans. The second floor housed educational programs, including classrooms where Tasha would soon complete her nursing degree alongside other students receiving foundation scholarships. "I still can't believe how much has changed in a year," Tasha said as they reached the third floor, which contained administrative offices. Her new office as executive director had a view of the Westport harbor. "You earned this," Jonathan told her. "Your experience with Victoria made you uniquely qualified to help others." "Speaking of helping others," Tasha said, leading him to a conference room where several small devices were displayed on a table. "The first shipment of your poison detection devices arrived today." Jonathan picked up one of the devices, about the size of a key fob, designed to test drinks discreetly for common poisons. He had developed the technology through CyberShield's medical division. "We'll distribute these to domestic violence shelters nationwide next month," Tasha explained. "And we're working with 3 medical schools to add poisoning detection to their curriculum, using my case as a teaching example." That evening, Jonathan joined Tasha and Elaine for dinner at their Greenwich home. Elaine's condition had improved significantly with advanced treatments funded by the foundation. She still used a wheelchair but could now stand for short periods and had regained dexterity in her hands. "I made dinner myself," Elaine announced proudly as they gathered at the table. "Part of my physical therapy." "It looks delicious," Jonathan said, taking a seat. During dinner, Tasha shared news about the foundation's first scholarship recipients, 5 nursing students who had interrupted their education to care for family members, just as she had. One young woman was supporting her father with Parkinson's, Tasha explained. She was working 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. Now she can finish her degree while we help with her father's care. "That's exactly what we created the foundation for," Jonathan said. After dinner, they moved to the garden. Unlike Jonathan's elaborate Japanese garden where Tasha had once eaten sand, this garden was simple and colorful, filled with vegetables and flowers. "No decorative sand anywhere," Tasha remarked, noticing Jonathan looking around. "I haven't had a craving since my last treatment. The doctors say the pica is completely gone." "I'm glad," Jonathan said, "though without it, we might never have discovered what Victoria was doing." "True," Tasha acknowledged. "Sometimes terrible things lead to unexpected good." The next morning, Jonathan attended a board meeting at CyberShield Technologies. He now visited the company quarterly rather than daily, focusing most of his energy on the foundation. "Profits are up 17% this quarter," his COO reported. and the Medical Technology Division has received preliminary FDA approval for the poison detection devices. Excellent, Jonathan said. I want those devices available to anyone who needs them, not just those who can afford them. After the meeting, Jonathan received a call from Tasha. I got my acceptance letter, she exclaimed. The nursing program approved all my previous credits. I can complete my degree in 12 months. That's wonderful news, Jonathan replied. I knew they would. A week later, the official opening ceremony for the Elaine Williams Foundation took place. Local officials, medical professionals, and families of poisoning victims gathered for the ribbon cutting. Detective Torres attended, as did Dr. Freeman and many of the medical staff who had treated Tasha. Tasha, dressed in a professional suit, gave the opening speech. 1 year ago, I was fighting for my life because someone systematically poisoned me, she began. Today, we open a center dedicated to ensuring no one else suffers that fate without help. This foundation exists to provide medical care, education, and support for victims of poisoning and abuse. After the ceremony, a journalist approached Tasha for an interview for a documentary on domestic poisoning awareness. Your case has brought national attention to poisoning as a form of abuse, the journalist said. How do you feel about being known as the woman who exposed the sandbox poisoner? I'm not defined by what happened to me, Tasha replied. I'm defined by what I've done with my life since. This foundation is my focus now, not Victoria. That afternoon, Jonathan visited the newly completed Elaine Williams Treatment Wing at Westport General Hospital. The specialized unit was designed specifically for treating poisoning victims, with advanced diagnostic equipment and dedicated specialists. Dr. Freeman met him at the entrance. We've already admitted 3 patients who might have gone undiagnosed before your devices and our new protocols were implemented. Are they recovering? Jonathan asked. 2 are already showing improvement. The 3rd was caught very early thanks to a shelter worker who recognized the symptoms from our training program. The official ribbon-cutting ceremony for the hospital wing was scheduled for that evening. As Jonathan prepared his remarks, he reflected on how much had changed in the year since Victoria's arrest. His perspective on wealth and success had transformed completely. Before, he had measured his worth by CyberShield's stock price and his expansive estate. Now, he valued the lives being saved through the foundation and the hospital wing. At 6 that evening, hospital staff, donors, and media gathered for the ribbon cutting. Jonathan, Tasha, and Elaine took their places at the entrance to the new wing. As the hospital administrator introduced them, Jonathan looked at Tasha, healthy, confident, and purposeful, and felt immense pride in her journey. After brief speeches, Jonathan and Tasha together cut the ribbon, officially opening the Elaine Williams Treatment Wing. Applause filled the hospital atrium as photographers captured the moment. As the crowd moved inside for tours, Tasha leaned close to Jonathan. I found sand in my garden this morning and felt nothing, not even a craving, she whispered. We really are free of her now. Jonathan smiled. Yes, we are. Victoria took so much from all of us, but she couldn't take our future. Later, as they walked through the treatment wing, seeing the state-of-the-art equipment and dedicated staff, Jonathan read some of the letters from people the foundation had already helped. Each story represented a life changed, a family supported, a future reclaimed from tragedy. When I built CyberShield, I thought success meant making money, Jonathan told Tasha as they paused by a window overlooking the hospital gardens. Now I know true success is measured in lives improved. We make a good team, Tasha said, smiling at him and her mother. Yes, Jonathan agreed, looking at the unlikely family he had found through the darkest experience of his life. We certainly do. Outside the hospital, spring flowers bloomed where winter snow had recently covered the ground. New beginnings were everywhere. In the hospital wing, in the foundation, and in their own lives, forever changed but stronger for having survived Victoria's poison. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.